Today, we're going to tackle a huge idea, one that will pretty much change how you see everything, from the stock market all the way down to your own life. It's all about those big surprises we never see coming and why our brains are basically wired to be fooled. But let's kick things off with a little puzzle. When is having 1,000 days of solid, positive proof, not just wrong, but actually a complete and total catastrophe waiting to happen? I know, it sounds like a trick question, but the answer is really at the heart of this entire idea. All right, let's unpack this with the famous story of a turkey. Just imagine you're this turkey, right? Every single day, a nice human comes and gives you food. Life is good. With every meal, you get more confident. Your whole worldview gets stronger. After 1,000 days, you have 1,000 solid data points all confirming one simple truth. Humans are awesome, and I am completely safe. And then, the day before Thanksgiving arrives, and your belief system gets, let's say, a very sudden and final update. See, the turkey's problem wasn't a lack of evidence. It was that he was drawing the completely wrong conclusion from it. He was learning the hard way that 1,000 days of history tells you absolutely nothing about what's coming on day 1001. And that brings us right to the main event, an idea from the brilliant Nassim Taleb. From the turkey's point of view, Thanksgiving was a black swan. A black swan event has 3 specific traits. First, it's a total outlier. Nothing in your past experience could have ever predicted it. Second, its impact is massive, extreme. And third, and this is the real kicker, after it happens, everyone looks back and says, oh, of course. It seems totally explainable, even predictable. I mean, to the butcher, it was just Wednesday, right? And it's that hindsight bias that tricks us into thinking we can see the next one coming. But we usually can't. So the big question is, why are we all so vulnerable to this? Why are we all turkeys in some way? Well, the first layer of deception starts right here, inside our own heads. Let's be honest. Reality is a mess. It's chaotic, it's random, it's complicated. But our brains, they hate that. They crave order. So what do? We automatically take all that chaos and we spin it into a neat, simple story. We say, the market went up because of this one headline, or that company succeeded because of its genius CEO. Taleb calls this the narrative fallacy. We're turning this complex web of luck and randomness into a simple story where A causes B. It makes us feel smart, like we understand how the world works, but really it's an illusion. And it blinds us to how much is just pure dumb luck. And our love for these simple stories leads to another mental trap, something Taleb calls platonicity. We build these clean, beautiful models, things like economic forecasts or business plans, and we just fall in love with them. We completely forget that we're just looking at a simplified map. We start to believe it's the actual territory. But the real world, the territory, is infinitely more complex and messy. And the most important things, the black swans, are almost always the details our neat little maps leave out.
So it's not just the stories we tell ourselves. The very evidence we use to build those stories is fundamentally broken. And that leads us to the second kind of deception, the evidence we completely miss.
The Roman philosopher Cicero told this great story about a guy named Diagoras. He's in a temple, and they show him all these paintings of sailors who prayed to the gods and then miraculously survived shipwrecks. They tell him, see, proof the gods saved them. But Diagoras asks the most important question you could ever ask. That's great, but where are the pictures of all the guys who prayed and drowned anyway? Exactly. We never, ever hear from the ones who drowned. This is the huge problem of silent evidence. We're obsessed with the survivors, the winners, the success stories. We read biographies of billionaires to figure out their secrets, but we completely ignore the millions of other people who had the exact same traits, bravery, smarts, optimism, and failed miserably. Because that graveyard of failures is silent, we get a totally warped sense of what it takes to succeed and what the real odds are. Think about an author, let's call her Yevgenia. For years, she gets nothing but rejections. Everyone thinks she's just stubborn, maybe not that talented. Then, one day, boom, her book becomes a massive, unexpected hit. And just like that, the story flips. That exact same trait they called stubborn is now hailed as visionary persistence. We see her, the one shining success, but we are completely blind to the silent graveyard of thousands of other writers who had that same dedication and got nowhere. So, you take our flawed storytelling brains and you combine it with our totally biased evidence, and what do you get? You get the grand deception, this crazy belief that we can actually predict the future. And to really get why this fails so hard, we need to take a little trip to 2 very different imaginary places. Taleb calls these 2 worlds Mediocristan and Extremistan. Now, Mediocrestan is the land of the predictable, the average. Think about something like human height. If you get 1,000 people in a room and then you add the tallest person on Earth, the average height barely budges. The extremes don't really matter that much. But in Extremistan, the rules are totally different. This is the world of things like wealth or book sales or YouTube views. Get 1,000 people in a room, calculate their average wealth, and then add Jeff Bezos. The average goes through the roof. One single data point can change the whole picture. The real difference here is scalability. A dentist can only see so many patients in a day. Her income is not scalable. That's Mediocrestan. But J.K. Rowling can sell another 1,000,000,000 books without any extra effort. Her income is scalable. That's Extremistan. And here's the thing. Our modern world, from finance to tech, is almost entirely dominated by Extremistan, which is the natural breeding ground for Black Swans. And that, right there, is why the experts get it so wrong so often. Their tools, their statistics, things like the bell curve, they were all designed for the safe, boring world of Mediocrestan. They get this tunnel vision, focusing only on their narrow models and ignoring everything outside of them. And most importantly, they make the exact same mistake as our turkey. They think that the absence of evidence for a problem is the same as evidence of its absence. Just because they didn't see a crash in the past data, they assume a crash isn't coming. So if we can't predict these huge events, are we just helpless? Are we doomed to be surprised forever? Not at all. The goal is not to predict black swans. That's a fool's game. The goal is to make yourself tough against the bad ones and open to the good ones. It's about learning how to be less of a turkey. Taleb's solution for this is something he calls the barbell strategy, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Picture a barbell a weightlifter uses. All the weight is on the two extremes, and there's nothing in the middle. You apply that same logic to your decisions. You want to be hyper-conservative with most of your stuff and hyper-aggressive with a tiny little bit. What you absolutely want to avoid is that fragile, uncertain middle. So here's how it plays out. On one side of your barbell, let's say 90% of your money is in something incredibly safe. So safe that no negative black swan, no market crash can possibly wipe you out. Then, on the other side, you take that last 10% and you put it into really high-risk speculative bets, things with massive, unlimited potential. The absolute most you can lose is that 10%, but your potential upside from a positive black swan is basically infinite. At the end of the day, this whole thing boils down to one simple, powerful shift in how you think. Stop trying to guess the probability of some rare event happening. You can't. It's impossible. Instead, focus only on the consequences if it does happen, because you can know those. Think about it. You have no idea what the probability of your house burning down is, but you know the consequences would be ruinous, so you buy insurance. You don't know the probability of a tiny startup becoming the next Google, but you know the consequence of losing a small investment is limited, while the upside could change your life. And that brings us right back to the beginning. The turkey's big problem wasn't a lack of information. It was a failure of imagination. He simply could not imagine a world that was different from his past experience. So the final question isn't for him, it's for you. What part of your life, your career, your investments is based on the assumption that tomorrow is going to look a lot like yesterday? What are the big certainties you're holding on to that might just be 1,000 days of good luck right before an unexpected revision of belief?